very tall for a maple tree. Normally you think of maple trees as those big mushroom-like shade trees that are in parks, but because these are all competing for sunlight, they get much, much taller. There's something special about this tree, other than the fact that it's very, very tall. It's actually the oldest tree on the farm. Any guesses of how old it is? 50? No one nailed it. It's about 325 years old. So older than Canada as a nation. Very, very old. The way we can tell is we had a tree that was slightly smaller in size, and it actually got struck by lightning and fell over. And so when it did, we counted up the rings inside. There was 300 on a smaller tree than this one. So this one is at least 300 plus years. So very, very old. If you drill a little hole into this tree and around March, pretty soon you'd see that something would come running out. It looks pretty much just like water. If you taste it, it tastes just about like water too, except there's a little bit of sweetness in there. And that water is actually, it's not water, it's called sap. If you fill this bottle up with tree sap, there'd be about 6% sugar in it naturally, just straight from the tree. Of course, not white sugar, but that kind of gives you a picture of how much sugar would be in it. If you boil that down, you get what's known as liquid gold, or maple syrup. That is 66% sugar. That's what makes maple syrup so healthy. Of course, that is natural sugar, so it's much, much easier for your body to digest, kind of like honey in that way. It's a healthy sugar for you. It doesn't eliminate the need to eat fruits and vegetables, even though it comes from a plant. If you look at this chart over here, you can see that we need lots of sap. If we gather this much sap, 40 little bottles full, and we'd want to make maple syrup, we'd boil it down and purify it, we'd only be left with 1 bottle of syrup. So that's why you need so many trees to make lots of maple syrup. And there's about 1,600 trees that we're collecting from in this forest. And it used to be that each one of them would have a little tap on it with a bucket hanging off the end and it'd drip into the bucket. Except no one wanted the job of collecting 1,600 buckets, so they switched over to the pipeline. And the pipeline is actually a pretty easy concept. It has a little tap like this. It gets stuck into the hole, and sap is the tree sugars, like I said. In the winter, that's stored down in the roots beneath the ground, and of course in the winter there's no leaves. In the springtime, when it wants to make leaves again, sap will travel up to the top of the tree if it's above freezing temperature. If it's below freezing temperature, sap falls back down to the roots. So the more times the sap goes up and down the tree, the more sap comes out. So the best time of year is right in between winter and spring. In my opinion, it's kind of bad weather. It's that mushy, slushy time when one day it's warm and the next day it's super cold again. So that back and forth, some years the season is only 2 weeks long, 3 weeks long. So it all depends on the weather, especially. If you take all this pipeline that's in the forest and you lay it in one straight line, from one end to the other would be 16 kilometers. So there's lots of pipeline, but it definitely makes it much easier than collecting all those buckets. If you see these big pieces of wood here, normally they start tapping a tree if it's about this big, which is usually around 30 to 40 years old. One like this, of course, the bigger the tree, the more sugar it makes. So a tree like this is a perfect size. However, if you get really big ones like this, you can have up to 3 buckets or 3 taps on it. And in one day, a tree this size could easily fill up 3 buckets of sap. But again, that's only going to make a fraction of maple syrup. So that's why there's so many. All of those pipelines run together in the middle of the forest. From there, there's a big pipe that shoots it over to that red building that we passed. And to make maple syrup, it's actually super easy. If you have sap, you can make it at home on your stove. You just take it in a pan and boil it. As water leaves and evaporates, the sugar will stay behind. Once you reach 66% sugar to water ratio, you've got maple syrup. They don't add anything. They do purify it, but yeah, if you have clean sap, then you can easily make syrup at home. You can make maple syrup from you can make birch syrup from birch trees from sap. However, that ratio is 70 to 1. That's why you don't see birch syrup anywhere, because it'd just be way too much work. But this kind of puts into perspective too why maple syrup is a bit more expensive than some of your corn syrups. Yep.
Is it only a certain kind of tree that we can collect the sap from?
So a lot of trees have different ones. The hardwood sugar maple has the highest sugar content already in it. So you can, yeah. So not everyone uses the hardwood sugar maples, but maples in general are the most common one that gets used.
The maple tree that we know in the city and stuff.
Yeah.
Could they be tough?
Yeah, for sure. Those actually, a tree like that will give more sap than a tree like this. That's because you want to have a nice big wide root system. These ones, because they're competing for sunlight, they're much smaller usually, but you can't have all those really big ones in a forest because then they're all going to compete for sunlight again. So that's why if you have one or two on a property, those ones will actually produce a lot more sap per tree. Yeah, perfect. Well, that's a little bit about maple syrup, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later on. But if you'd like to say hi to Bob and Spirit or take a picture with them, now's a good time to do that. As long as you come up to them from the front. They can't. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We live just on the. Yeah. 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 So as a progressive Mennonite, my life is and the lifestyle and home life is not that much different. There's certain things that we practice that other families might not quite as much. But I would, yeah, from what I can tell, it's not that. If we get inside here, we'll try not to take any pictures or videos. It is a field corn, so most of it gets used for the cattle. But there are certain people who use it in certain kinds of fields, but for the most part, it's mainly for animals that they use it. It's not like the sweet corn you can buy at the store. It's slightly different.